He was the most feared man in Chicago, a mafia king protected by money power and men willing to kill for him. But when the bullet came, none of them moved fast enough. His secretary did. Natalie Brooks had spent 6 years walking 3 steps behind Damian Cross, unseen in crowded rooms, ignored in private ones, quietly protecting a man who never once asked what it cost her. Then, beneath the chandeliers of a museum gala, she stepped in front of the gun meant for him. As her blood covered his hands, she whispered the one truth Damian was never ready to hear. You never looked back. This is not only a story about danger and forbidden love. It is about the people we fail to value until losing them becomes real. Stay until the end, like the video and comment where you are watching from tonight. 6 weeks before blood stained the marble floor of the museum, Natalie Brooks followed Damian Cross through the revolving doors of Cross Meridian Tower. 3 steps behind him. Always 3. The distance was not written in any company policy. Damian had never instructed her to walk that way. It had simply become the shape of their lives. He entered every room first. She noticed what followed him inside. That morning, Chicago was buried beneath a gray February sky. Snow clung to the edges of Michigan Avenue, turning black beneath tires and polished shoes. Wind moved between the towers with the sharpness of broken glass. People rushed toward heated lobbies with their heads lowered, coffee held close to their chests. Damian did not rush. The city seemed to move around him. He wore a charcoal overcoat over a black suit, no scarf, no gloves. 2 men from his security detail walked ahead while Marcus Hale followed near his right shoulder. Damian crossed the lobby without looking toward the reception desk, the waiting executives, or the reporters outside the glass doors. Every person in the building knew his name. Most of them lowered their voices when he passed. Cross Meridian Holdings occupied 47 floors of the tower. But Damian's influence reached far beyond the steel and glass bearing his family name. The public knew him as a private investor who had transformed abandoned industrial sites into luxury developments. Newspapers described him as disciplined, secretive, and impossible to interview. The men who worked along the river used different words. They said Damian controlled the trucks that moved after midnight. They said no shipping contract reached the South Side without passing through someone loyal to the Cross family. They said judges returned his calls faster than they returned calls from the mayor. They said men who stole from Damian left Chicago without packing their homes. No article ever printed those stories. Natalie had heard all of them. She continued walking 3 steps behind. The lobby security director hurried toward Damian. "Good morning, Mr. Cross." Damian kept moving. "Is it?" the director faltered. Natalie glanced at the man's tablet. "The East Garage camera went offline at 5:17, she said. "Maintenance is waiting for your approval to replace the control unit." The director looked relieved. "Yes, Ms. Brooks, do not wait. Close the garage until it is repaired. We have vehicles arriving for the board meeting. Redirect them to the north entrance." The director looked toward Damian for confirmation. Damian pressed the private elevator button without turning around. "You heard her." The doors opened. Damian stepped inside with Marcus. Natalie followed. 1 guard remained in the lobby. The other entered and faced the doors. Natalie took her usual place near the panel. Damian looked at the illuminated floor numbers. "Why was I not informed about the camera?" "You were," Natalie said. "When? 5:21 this morning?" "I was asleep. You asked to be informed. I also asked not to be disturbed before 6. You cannot have both." Marcus hid a smile. Damian looked at Natalie's reflection in the mirrored elevator wall. She wore a cream blouse beneath a navy coat, her dark hair pinned at the base of her neck. Nothing about her appearance demanded attention. No bright jewelry, no dramatic lipstick, no perfume strong enough to remain after she left a room. Even her silence felt carefully chosen. "Which instruction did you decide mattered more?" Damian asked. "The one that kept your vehicle out of an unmonitored garage." The elevator rose. Damian said nothing. Natalie did not need thanks. She had learned that years ago. The doors opened on the executive floor. His office occupied the northeast corner of the building with windows overlooking the Chicago River and the distant line of Lake Michigan. His desk was carved from dark walnut. The walls held no family photographs. The shelves displayed legal books, financial reports, and one framed image of a much younger Damian standing beside his mother. Natalie entered before him this time. She crossed to the desk, placed a leather folder beside his right hand, and adjusted the coffee already waiting there. Damian removed his coat. "This is cold." "It was delivered 4 minutes ago." He tasted it. "Too bitter." "You did not sleep. That does not change the coffee. It changes how you order it." He looked at the cup. "Half a teaspoon of sugar." He never asked for sugar when anyone else was listening. Natalie returned to the door. "Your first meeting begins in 12 minutes. The Hollis contract is marked on page 42. Marcus needs your approval on the revised security rotation. Your brother called twice from New York. I do not have a brother. Then a man who shares your father's name and half your blood called twice from New York." Damian opened the folder. "What does Julian want?" He did not say. He never does. He sounded sober. That made Damian look up. "Call him back. He asked for you. He always asks for me. He speaks to you. He says I am less frightening. He lies. Not often enough to be convincing." Something almost softened around Damian's mouth, but the expression vanished before it became a smile. Natalie closed the office door. Her desk stood outside his, positioned between the elevators and the executive conference room. From there, she could see every person approaching Damian's office. She could also see the reflected movement in the glass wall behind her. That had not been an accident. When she first joined Cross Meridian 6 years earlier, the desk had faced the windows. On her second day, she asked facilities to rotate it. The office manager complained about symmetry. Natalie explained that she preferred seeing who entered the floor. Nobody asked why. By 6:30, she had already reviewed the day's visitor list, checked the identification records of 3 outside consultants, corrected an error in a vehicle request, moved 1 lunch meeting, and canceled a floral delivery that had no listed sender. At 6:48, she opened a private file on her computer. The file contained names, dates, photographs, vehicle registration numbers, and copies of building access logs. It was not part of her official job. Nothing in her official job description mentioned threats, patterns, or inconsistencies. Officially, Natalie managed Damian's calendar. In practice, she managed the distance between him and everyone who wanted something from him. Some wanted money, some wanted influence, some wanted protection. A few wanted him dead. She had learned to identify the difference by watching hands. People could control their voices. They could practice expressions in mirrors. They could prepare lies before stepping into his office. Hands betrayed them. They tightened around glasses. They reached too quickly toward inner pockets. They trembled when Damian mentioned names they claimed not to know. Natalie remembered hands. At 7:12, an assistant from the legal department approached her desk carrying a sealed envelope. This was delivered downstairs. Natalie did not take it immediately. By whom a courier? Which company? The assistant blinked. "I did not ask. Did the courier sign in? I assume security handled it." Natalie looked at the envelope. No company logo, no return address. Damian's name was written in block letters. "Leave it there." The assistant placed it on the corner of the desk. Natalie reached into the lower drawer and removed a pair of gloves. The assistant laughed nervously. "Do you think it is dangerous? I think assumptions are expensive." She examined the edges, weight, and seal, then called security. Marcus arrived 3 minutes later. He picked up the envelope with one hand. "You know, most people just open mail. Most people do not work for Damian." Marcus looked through the glass toward the closed office. "Some days I envy them." He held the envelope toward the light. "Feels like paper. So does a photograph. So does a threat. So does a restaurant menu. Then perhaps someone is recommending lunch." Marcus gave her a tired look. He had been Damian's friend since they were teenagers. A narrow scar ran from his right temple into his hairline. He trusted instincts built in Allie's back rooms and armed confrontations. He did not trust Natalie's spreadsheets. "You stayed late again," he said. "I left at 11. That is late. You left at 11:15. I am head of security, and I am discussing suspicious mail with you before sunrise." Marcus sighed and carried the envelope toward the secure room. Natalie returned to her screen. A red notification appeared beside Damian's schedule. The warehouse inspection for Friday had been modified. She opened the event details. The change looked minor. Electrical maintenance would begin at noon instead of 6 in the evening. Damian's inspection was scheduled for 1:30. Natalie opened the attached work order. She read the authorization code twice. Then she searched the employee directory. No result. She searched archived records. A name appeared. Thomas Velez, electrical supervisor. Employment ended 8 months earlier. Reason for termination deceased. Natalie stared at the screen. Behind the glass wall, Damian stood near the windows with his phone pressed to his ear. His posture was still, but one hand had curled around the edge of his desk. Julian, she thought. Family conversations always tightened something in him. Natalie saved the work order to the private file. Then she printed it. The executive meeting began at 7:30. 12 people gathered around the long table, each carrying reports tablets and quiet fears. Damian entered last. He never apologized for making people wait. Natalie followed and placed the marked contract beside his chair. Ethan Cole sat on Damian's left. Ethan was everything Damian was not in public. Warm, charming, easy with names. He remembered birthdays, children, divorces, and preferred drinks. Investors liked him because he made power feel welcoming. His gray suit was perfectly tailored. His gold cufflinks caught the morning light. He looked at Natalie as she arranged the documents. "You make the rest of us look unprepared. I prepare the documents you forget to read." A few executives laughed. Ethan placed one hand over his heart. That was cruel. It was accurate. Damian opened the contract. "Can we begin before Ethan mistakes this meeting for a social event?" The room became silent. Numbers filled the next 40 minutes. Cross Meridian planned to purchase a chain of shipping facilities across Indiana and Wisconsin. The acquisition would expand legitimate operations while giving Damian greater control over routes his family had used for decades. The board discussed labor costs, insurance regulatory delays, and political support. Natalie watched Ethan. He checked his phone beneath the table 3 times. Each time, the screen illuminated his hand. A black ring marked his middle finger. She had never noticed it before. "Page 42, Damian said. An attorney began discussing liability language. Damian turned directly to the marked section. Ethan looked toward Natalie. "One day you are going to realize you run this company." She did not answer. A vice president smiled. "She already does." Several people laughed again. Damian signed the page. "She is paid to make sure I do not waste time." The laughter ended. Natalie stood near the wall with her tablet against her waist. "Yes, Mr. Cross." She gave no sign that his words affected her. That was another thing she had learned. Pain became dangerous around powerful men. Some used it, some feared it. Damian did both. After the meeting, executives moved toward the elevators in groups. Ethan remained behind. He adjusted his cufflink and looked at Natalie. He did not mean it the way it sounded. Natalie gathered the abandoned glasses. "He usually does. You have worked for him too long. 6 years. You remembered the exact number. I remember most things." Ethan smiled. The smile reached his mouth but not his eyes. That must be exhausting. He left the room. Natalie watched him until the elevator doors closed. At 9:20, Damian's schedule showed a private breakfast with Alderman Richard Voss at a restaurant in River North. Natalie called the restaurant. A manager confirmed the reservation and listed the staff assigned to the private room. One name appeared twice under different employee numbers. She asked the manager to verify. He placed her on hold. 3 minutes later, he returned sounding confused. The second employee number did not exist. Natalie canceled the reservation. She moved the meeting to a private dining room inside Cross Meridian Tower. At 9:30, Damian appeared at her desk. "Why is Voss downstairs?" The restaurant made a staffing error. What kind of error? One that required a change. Damian glanced at the elevator. "Did Marcus approve this?" "I did." "You are not head of security." "No, then why are you making security decisions?" "Because the restaurant could not identify everyone with access to your room." Damian's expression sharpened. "Was there a threat?" "I did not say that. You canceled a meeting with a city official because of an administrative mistake. I moved the meeting 6 blocks. You embarrassed him. He will recover. He controls 2 zoning committees, and now he can control them from the 32nd floor. Damian leaned one hand against her desk. People nearby looked away. His voice lowered. "Natalie, caution is useful until it becomes fear." She met his gaze. Fear notices things confidence ignores. For a moment, the sounds of the floor seemed to retreat. Damian looked at her as if she had spoken in a language he almost remembered. Then, the elevator opened. Alderman Voss emerged with 2 aides. Damian straightened his jacket. "We will discuss this later." Natalie picked up her tablet. "You have said that before. The meeting lasted 50 minutes. Nothing happened. That was how Natalie's work usually looked. No gunshots, no shattered glass, no visible disaster. Only a day continuing because she had changed something before anyone else understood why. At noon, a delivery arrived from a florist. White lilies. Natalie signed for them herself. She carried them into Damian's office and placed them near the windows. He was standing with his back to the room, looking down at the river. The anniversary of his mother's death was not listed on any company calendar. Natalie had found the date during her first year at Cross Meridian, after noticing that Damian canceled every afternoon meeting on the same February day. She had sent lilies anonymously ever since. His mother held the same flowers in the photograph on his shelf. Damian turned. His gaze stopped on the arrangement. Who sent those? There was no card. His face gave nothing away. Throw them out. Natalie adjusted one stem. I will move them to the conference room. I said, throw them out. She looked at him. He looked at the flowers. Neither moved. After a long silence, Damian returned to his desk. The conference room is fine. Natalie carried the lilies toward the door. Your driver will be ready at 5. Cancel him. You have dinner in Lake Forest. I am aware. You do not drive yourself after dark. I have managed it before. You also have a migraine. His hand paused above a document. I do not. You have touched your left temple 9 times since the board meeting. You counted yes. Damian looked almost offended. Natalie opened the cabinet beside the door and removed a small bottle of medication. She set it on his desk with a glass of water. Take one after you eat. I am not hungry. That is why there is food in the private kitchen. You arranged that too. The world has not yet learned to feed you without supervision. His eyes remained on her. Something in the room shifted. It was not tenderness. Damian did not trust tenderness. It was awareness, brief and unwelcome. Natalie stepped back. Your 1 o'clock call begins in 7 minutes. The moment closed. By 7 that evening, most of the executive floor had emptied. Snow tapped against the windows. Natalie sat alone at her desk, reviewing the Friday warehouse files. The electrical order remained open beside 3 archived documents. The authorization code had been used twice before. Once at a hotel where a service elevator failed hours before Damian arrived. Once at a parking structure where a camera outage had gone unexplained. The incidents had been dismissed as maintenance problems. Natalie placed the dates into a spreadsheet. A pattern emerged. Each location had been visited by Ethan Cole within the previous week. She leaned back. Patterns could mislead. Coincidence could look deliberate when enough fear surrounded it. She needed more. The door to Damian's office opened. He stood without his jacket, his tie loosened slightly. You are still here. Natalie looked at the clock. So are you. That was not an invitation to compare schedules. Then it was an observation with no practical use. Damian glanced at the paper bag beside her keyboard. Did you eat? She looked at it as though she had forgotten it was there. Eventually, that is not an answer. Neither is most of what you say. He stared at her. Natalie waited for anger. Instead, the corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. His phone rang before the expression could settle. He checked the screen. The softness disappeared. Go home, Natalie. You have a call with New York. I know. Marcus is waiting downstairs. I know. She closed the warehouse file. Damian turned toward his office. Do you ever leave when I tell you to sometimes? When Christmas Day? You answered emails. You sent them. He stopped in the doorway. For one suspended second, they looked at each other across the quiet floor. Then he entered his office and closed the door. Natalie put on her coat. She did not go home. She took the service elevator to the records floor. Cross Meridian archived physical vendor documents in a locked room near accounting. Natalie's access card opened the first door, but not the second. She called the night manager. I need the original electrical vendor files for the River South property. Tonight? Yes. Can it wait until morning? No. The manager arrived 10 minutes later, still chewing his dinner. He unlocked the room. Natalie found the folder marked with the dead electrician's name. The signature on the recent work order did not match his archived signature. The authorization code did. Someone had copied a valid code from an old file. She photographed every page. On her way out, she noticed a withdrawal slip attached to a vendor payment report. The payment had been approved through the office of the Chief Financial Officer, Ethan Cole. She returned the folder exactly as she found it. Outside, the snow had become heavier. Natalie stood beneath the building awning and called her sister. Sarah answered after 3 rings. "You are still at work." Natalie watched traffic move slowly along Wacker Drive. "How do you know? Because you only call this late when you are walking to the train. I could be at home. You would sound warmer." Natalie smiled faintly. Sarah's voice softened. "How bad is it? Whatever you are pretending is normal." Natalie looked back at Cross Meridian Tower. The top floor still glowed against the night. "Nothing is wrong. You work for Damian Cross. I work for a company. You work 6 feet from a man who brings armed guards into elevators. 7 feet. That does not help." Natalie stepped away from the wind. Sarah continued. "You could leave Chicago. The university in Madison is hiring executive staff. You would have normal hours, normal co-workers. A boss who does not appear in federal reports. Damian does not appear in federal reports. That is not the defense you think it is." Natalie said nothing. Sarah exhaled. "Does he even know what you do for him?" The question remained between them. Natalie remembered the flowers moved to the conference room instead of the trash. She remembered Damian counting on documents appearing beneath his hand before he asked. She remembered the way he had looked at her when she mentioned fear. "No," she said, "and you are fine with that." Natalie watched his office light. It is probably why it works. She ended the call and walked toward the station. At home, Natalie lived in a narrow apartment in Lincoln Park above a bakery that began work before dawn. Her furniture was simple. Her walls held photographs of Sarah, their parents, and a lake house they had visited as children. No photographs of Damian. She removed her shoes, heated soup, and opened her laptop at the kitchen table. The private file required 2 passwords. She uploaded the work order, the archived signatures, and the vendor payment report. Then she created a new heading, Internal Access. Beneath it, she typed Ethan Cole's name. She did not accuse him. She listed facts. Visited hotel 4 days before elevator failure. Visited parking structure 6 days before camera outage. Office approved payment connected to false warehouse work order. She stared at the words. Ethan had worked beside Damian for 9 years. He had attended family funerals. He had negotiated settlements with rival crews. He knew which entrances Damian used, which hospitals the family trusted, and which officers were paid to look away. If Natalie was wrong, the accusation could destroy a man. If she was right, saying it too early could start a war. Her phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. She opened the message. Stop checking the gala staff. Natalie did not move. A second message arrived. The next warning will not be sent to you. The apartment seemed to change around her. The refrigerator motor sounded louder. A car door closed on the street. Footsteps moved along the hallway outside, then past her door. Natalie stood slowly. She checked the lock, then the windows. No movement outside. She took screenshots of both messages and forwarded them to a private account Sarah did not know existed. After that, she deleted the conversation from her phone. She remained standing in the center of the kitchen. Fear was not new to her. She had felt it in parking garages when footsteps followed too closely. She had felt it while examining suspicious packages. She had felt it when Marcus discovered the cut brake line in a company vehicle and dismissed her discovery as luck. This fear was different. It had her name. It knew what she was investigating. Someone inside Damian's world had noticed her. She looked at the open laptop. Ethan's name waited beneath the heading. At 7 the next morning, Natalie entered Cross Meridian Tower. Her face revealed nothing. The lobby director informed her that the east garage camera had been replaced. Marcus reported that the suspicious envelope contained only a photograph of Damian leaving a restaurant. She asked to see it. The image had been taken from across the street. Damian stood near his car. Natalie stood behind him. Someone had drawn a red circle around her face. Marcus watched her reaction. "You know what this means?" "Yes." "You need protection?" "No." "Natalie, if someone inside the company is involved, adding more people around me gives them more information. That is not your decision. It is my life." Marcus lowered his voice. "You think this is connected to the warehouse?" She looked at him. "I did not say that. You did not have to." For the first time, there was no amusement in his expression. "Tell Damian, not yet. He will find out. Then let him find out when we have proof. Marcus stepped closer. You are treating this like a corporate investigation. I am treating it like an accusation that could get someone killed. In Damian's world, hesitation gets people killed. In Damian's world, anger does too. Marcus looked toward the private elevator. You understand him better than most people. No, Natalie said. I understand what he does when he is hurt. The elevator doors opened. Damian emerged from the underground garage with 2 guards behind him. His gaze moved from Marcus to Natalie. What happened? Marcus began to answer. Natalie spoke first. The warehouse visit needs to be canceled. Damian removed his gloves 1 finger at a time. That is Friday. Yes, and today is Tuesday. The electrical maintenance order was forged. His expression changed. Come inside. Natalie followed him toward the elevator. 3 steps behind. This time, Damian stopped before entering. He turned and looked directly at her. The movement forced her to stop too. For a moment, the entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. What else have you not told me? He asked. Natalie thought of the messages, the photograph, the payment report, and Ethan's name sitting inside a locked file. Enough to know someone is getting closer. Damian's eyes hardened. To me, Natalie looked at the red circle drawn around her face in the photograph Marcus still held. To both of us. The elevator doors began to close. Damian reached out and stopped them with 1 hand. Get inside, Natalie. She entered. He followed after her. For the first time in 6 years, she was not walking behind him. Warnings he refuses to hear. The elevator rose in silence. Natalie stood near the control panel while Damian watched her reflection in the mirrored wall. Marcus remained by the doors, holding the photograph inside a clear evidence sleeve. The red circle around Natalie's face looked almost childish. That made it worse. Damian extended his hand. Marcus gave him the photograph. For several seconds, Damian studied it without speaking. The image showed him stepping toward his car after dinner at a private club in River North. Natalie stood behind him, 1 hand raised toward the approaching driver. The camera had focused on Damian. The red ink had chosen Natalie. When was this taken? Damian asked. 11 nights ago, Marcus said, based on the restaurant schedule and the weather. Damian turned the photograph over. Nothing was written on the back. No fingerprints. Not yet. Who delivered it? Courier entered through the north lobby at 7 this morning. Baseball cap, medical mask, paid cash. Find him. We are checking the exterior cameras. Natalie looked at the floor numbers. The courier may not know who hired him. Damian's eyes shifted toward her. That does not make him useless. No. It makes him a link, not an answer. You seem very calm for someone whose face has been marked in red. I have found that panic rarely improves evidence. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. Damian did not move. Neither did Marcus. Natalie looked at him. Your 8 o'clock meeting begins in 16 minutes. Cancel it. It involves the warehouse acquisition. Cancel it. Damian. The use of his first name sharpened the silence again. He stepped from the elevator. Inside my office. Both of you. Natalie followed. This time she did not count the distance. Damian closed the door and crossed to his desk. He placed the photograph beneath the lamp, then removed his jacket with controlled precision. That was when Natalie knew he was angry. Damian rarely raised his voice when anger first arrived. He became quieter. Every movement became exact. Every word lost unnecessary weight. He looked at her. Start at the beginning. Natalie remained standing. The East Garage camera failed yesterday morning. The warehouse maintenance order was issued under the authorization code of Thomas Velez, an electrician who died 8 months ago. The same code appears in records connected to 2 earlier incidents. What incidents? The service elevator failure at the Monroe Hotel and the camera outage at the Franklin parking structure. Marcus frowned. Those were investigated. They were closed as equipment problems. Because there was no evidence of sabotage. There was no evidence anyone looked for a connection. Damian leaned both hands against his desk. Why were you looking? Natalie held his gaze. Because the incidents happened shortly before your arrival. That happens every week in this city, not using the same dead man's authorization code. Marcus stepped closer to the desk. Who approved the warehouse payment? Natalie did not answer immediately. Damian noticed. Say it. The request passed through Ethan's office. Nothing moved in Damian's face. That absence of reaction frightened Natalie more than visible rage. Marcus looked toward the door as if Ethan might be standing on the other side. "You are accusing Ethan Cole of arranging an attack on Damian. No, you just connected him to 3 security failures. I connected his office to a payment." Damian's voice lowered. "Do not hide behind language. I am not hiding. I am refusing to name a traitor before I have proof. You have forged records, repeated authorization codes, threatening messages, and a photograph. I have a pattern. You have enough." For what Damian looked at Marcus. "Bring Ethan in." Natalie stepped forward. "No." Both men turned toward her. Damian's expression became unreadable. "What did you say? Do not bring him in. You do not give orders in this room. Then consider it a warning. I have heard enough warnings. No, you have heard enough to become angry. That is not the same thing." Marcus moved between them slightly. "Natalie." She ignored him. "If Ethan is involved, calling him here tells him we know. If he is not involved, confronting him without proof tells every person in this company that suspicion is enough to destroy them." Damian came around the desk. "He has access to my schedule. So do I. He approves vendors. So do 6 other executives. He visited every location. For legitimate reasons. You are defending him. I am defending the truth from your temper." The words landed hard. Marcus lowered his eyes. Damian stopped a few feet from Natalie. Most people retreated when he stood that close. She did not. "You think I cannot control myself," he said. "I think betrayal makes you 17 years old again." The room became still. Damian's father had been murdered when Damian was 17. Everyone in his inner circle knew that. Very few spoke of it. No one used it against him. Natalie had not intended cruelty, but the pain in his eyes made her wish she could take the sentence back. He stepped closer. "What exactly do you think you know about that night? Only what it taught you. And what was that trust is a door someone else can open?" His jaw tightened. "You have mistaken observation for intimacy." "No," Natalie said softly. "I know the difference." For a moment, neither of them moved. The city stretched below the windows, cold and distant. Cars crossed the river like dark insects. Snow collected along the edges of rooftops. Damian looked at Marcus. "Leave us." Marcus hesitated. "Damian, now." Marcus set the photograph on the desk and left. The door closed. Natalie stood alone with the most dangerous man in Chicago. He walked toward the windows. "You received messages." It was not a question. Natalie said nothing. Damian turned. "Marcus found the photograph this morning. That is not why you changed the warehouse visit." "No, how many messages to? When last night? What did they say?" She remained silent. Damian crossed the room and held out his hand. "Your phone. I deleted them. You saved copies." She looked at him. His mouth hardened. "You save everything." Natalie took out her phone, opened the private account, and showed him the screenshots. He read the first message. "Stop checking the gala staff." Then the second. "The next warning will not be sent to you." The air around him seemed to change. "What gala staff? The museum charity event? You have been investigating it without telling me. I have been verifying temporary employees. Why the floor plan was changed. The catering company replaced 2 staff members after background checks were completed. One temporary employee previously worked for a business connected to the Belandi family." Damian's eyes sharpened. "The Belandis have been quiet for 3 years. Quiet is not the same as gone. You should have come to me. You would have canceled the contract, threatened the catering company, and sent men to the Belandis before we knew whether the connection mattered. You say that as though it would be unreasonable. I say it because it would warn whoever is watching." Damian looked at the message again. "They are not only watching me." Natalie lowered the phone. "No." His gaze moved over her face. For the first time, she saw something beneath his anger that looked dangerously close to fear. It vanished almost at once. "You are getting a security detail." "No, that was not a request. It concerns my life. It concerns mine, too. I did not ask you to make that connection. I am making it now." Natalie put the phone into her bag. "You cannot place armed men outside my apartment. I can. You cannot follow Sarah. I can protect her. She does not belong to your world. Neither did you." The sentence struck deeper than he expected. Natalie looked away. Damian saw it. He lowered his voice. Someone sent you a photograph with your face marked. They know where you work. They know what you are checking. They may know where you live. I understand the threat. Then act like it. I am. You are still here, so are you. That is different, only because you believe your life carries more weight. Damian stared at her. I believe there are people who depend on me. There are people who depend on everyone. You know what happens if I fall? Yes. Then stop arguing. No. The word was quiet. Absolute. Damian had heard refusal from enemies, judges, business rivals, and men facing death. None of it unsettled him the way Natalie's refusal did. Why are you doing this? He asked. She looked at him again. Doing what, standing in the middle of something that could kill you? Her throat tightened. Because you never notice danger until it touches someone else. Because someone has to think before you become furious. Because I have spent 6 years watching you walk into rooms as though survival is proof that you are untouchable. She said none of it. Instead, she answered, because someone inside this company is helping them. That is not an answer. It is the only one that matters right now. Damian took another step toward her. What matters to you outside this company? The question was so unexpected that Natalie almost laughed. My sister. Who else? My parents. They live in Wisconsin. You had my background checked. I have everyone checked. I know. Who else? Natalie looked toward the lilies visible through the glass wall of the conference room. No one you need to protect. Damian followed her gaze. Something passed through his expression. He remembered the flowers. He remembered every year without knowing why. Were the lilies from you? Natalie's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. This is not the time. That means yes. It means the gala is in 4 days, and someone inside your organization has access to the staffing records. 6 years. She said nothing. You sent them for 6 years. Your next meeting begins in 8 minutes. Cancel it. You cannot cancel every meeting because a conversation becomes uncomfortable. I can cancel whatever I want. There is the problem. Damian almost smiled, but pain remained behind his eyes. Why lilies? Your mother held them in the photograph. You noticed that, yes, and you sent them without a card, yes. Why Natalie forced herself not to look away. Because grief does not become smaller when no one acknowledges it. Damian's face hardened, not from anger this time, but from the effort of containing something else. You never knew her. No. Then why did you care? The answer rose too quickly. Because I cared about you. She stopped it before it reached her mouth. You were alone. I prefer being alone. No. You prefer not being watched while you are hurting. His eyes darkened. That is enough. Natalie nodded. Yes. She turned toward the door. Natalie. She stopped. You will have 2 guards, Damian said. 1 outside your building and 1 following you to work. No. Then 4. She looked back at him. You cannot threaten me into accepting protection. I am not threatening you. You added guards because I refused. That is negotiation. That is why nobody tells you the truth. His expression changed. She opened the door before he could respond. Marcus stood near her desk, pretending not to listen. Natalie handed him the printed warehouse order. Send a team to inspect the electrical room. Do not use company vehicles. Do not alert the property manager. Marcus accepted the pages. Damian approved that he will. Damian appeared in the doorway behind her. I just did. Natalie sat at her desk. The 8 o'clock meeting began 7 minutes late. By noon, Marcus called from the warehouse. His voice had lost its usual dry humor. We found something. Natalie stood. What an incendiary device connected to the primary electrical system. Crude but effective. Fire doors programmed to lock when the alarm activated. Damian was in his office speaking with 2 attorneys. Natalie looked through the glass. How long, based on the timer system, it would have triggered during Friday's inspection? Any fingerprints, none visible. Tell Damian. I thought you wanted proof first. This is proof of an attack, not proof of who arranged it. Marcus was silent for a moment. You were right. Natalie looked at the city. I wish I had not been. She ended the call. Damian looked up from inside his office. Something in her face must have told him. He dismissed the attorneys with one movement of his hand. Natalie entered. They found an incendiary device. The attorneys paused near the door. Damian waited until they had left. Connected to the electrical order. Yes. Would it have killed me? The fire doors were set to lock. He walked toward the windows. Natalie knew that movement. He needed distance before anger found a target. How many people would have been inside, he asked. 23 employees, 3 union representatives, Marcus and your security team. Damian's shoulders became still. Close the property. Already done. Notify the police. Marcus is preserving the scene. Find Ethan. Damian. He turned. Do not ask me to wait. I am asking you not to destroy the investigation. He approved the payment. His office approved it. You keep making that distinction. Because it matters. Not to me, it should. He came toward her. You almost walked into a building designed to become a coffin. I was never going to that warehouse. You canceled the visit. For you. The words left her before she could soften them. Damian stopped. Natalie felt the room narrow around them. She looked down at the papers in her hand. For everyone, she added. It was too late. He had heard the first answer. You have done this before, he said. What changed meetings? Replaced drivers? Moved dinners? I manage your schedule. No, you manage threats. Natalie said nothing. Damian crossed to his desk and opened the secure drawer. He removed a file containing security reports from the previous year. He placed them on the table. The Monroe Hotel elevator. She watched him. You moved my meeting upstairs. Yes. The Franklin garage. I sent the driver to the south entrance. The private dinner with Councilman Reed. The restaurant could not verify a kitchen employee. The flight to New York last spring. The maintenance report listed a hydraulic warning. Damian looked at her. That plane was grounded the next day. Yes, how many times I do not know. You remember everything. I do not count days that continue normally. His face changed at that. You should have told me. I did. No, you changed details and let me believe it was administrative. You dismissed every concern unless Marcus confirmed it. Because Marcus is security, and I am a secretary. He heard the bitterness faint but undeniable. I did not say that. You did this morning. You have said it for 6 years in different ways. Damian looked toward her desk outside the glass. The chair, the folders, the coffee, the constant presence he had treated as part of the building itself. I trusted your decisions. You trusted the results. What is the difference? You never asked how I reached them. For once, Damian had no answer ready. Natalie returned to the warehouse report. The gala needs to be canceled. No. She stared at him. You cannot be serious. The mayor, 2 senators, and half the city's hospital board will attend. That makes it more dangerous. It makes canceling impossible. Nothing is impossible for you. You remind everyone of that daily. I will not disappear from a public event because someone planted a device in an empty warehouse. It was not empty. It was waiting for you. Marcus will increase security. The threat is coming from inside. You still have not proven that. Someone accessed the gala staff records through the catering company. Someone knew I was checking, then stopped checking. Natalie looked at him as though he had struck her. Damian heard the cruelty only after speaking. He continued before she could answer. You are off the gala. No. Yes. I built the guest list. I approved the vendors. I know the floor plan better than Marcus. You are being threatened. So are you. That is different. Only to you. Damian's voice hardened. You will stay home. Natalie placed the report on his desk. You do not own my decisions. I control who attends my events. Then fire me. The room went silent. Damian's eyes narrowed. You do not mean that. Do not decide what I mean. You would throw away 6 years over one event, no. You would throw away 6 years because you cannot tolerate being challenged. He moved closer. You are not going. I am. I can have security prevent you from entering. I can enter as museum staff. I can call the museum. I can call the donors. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Natalie stepped closer instead of retreating. If you want obedience, hire someone who does not care whether you survive. His breathing changed. The words remained suspended between them. Neither seemed able to move away. Damian's gaze dropped briefly to her lips. Natalie noticed. He noticed that she noticed. The moment became too intimate, too exposed. Damian stepped back first. Get out! Natalie collected her papers. She walked to the door. Natalie, she turned. His anger had not disappeared, but something raw moved beneath it. Do not make me choose between protecting you and trusting you. Her answer was quiet. You already made that choice years ago. She left the office. That evening, Natalie returned home before 9 for the first time in weeks. Sarah was waiting outside her apartment. She stood with her arms folded beneath a red wool coat, a travel bag near her feet. Natalie stopped at the end of the hallway. "What are you doing here?" "Checking whether you are alive. You drove from Milwaukee." "You stopped answering honestly. I answered every call. You said everything was fine. That does not count." Natalie unlocked the door. Sarah entered and looked around. "You checked the windows before turning on the lights." "Habit." "No. Fear." Natalie placed her bag on the kitchen table. Sarah watched her remove the laptop. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Natalie." She opened the private file. Sarah crossed the room and closed the laptop. "What happened?" Natalie looked at her sister. The controlled expression she wore inside Cross Meridian Tower began to break. "Someone tried to trap Damian in a warehouse." Sarah's face drained. "And they sent me a warning." Sarah stepped back. "You are leaving. I cannot." "You can. I know who may be involved. Then tell the police. The records could implicate innocent people. I need a clear chain. You are talking like this is your responsibility. It became my responsibility when I found it." "No, it became Damian Cross's responsibility when he built a life where people plant bombs in warehouses." Natalie looked away. Sarah's voice softened. "Does he know you are in danger?" "Yes, and he assigned guards." Sarah blinked. "You refused them." Natalie said nothing. "Of course you refused. I do not know who I can trust." "Do you trust him?" The question hurt more than Natalie expected. "Yes." "Then why does that sound like a confession?" Natalie sat at the table. Sarah took the chair across from her. For several moments, only the bakery equipment hummed below the floor. Natalie opened a drawer and removed a large envelope. She placed it between them. "If I do not call you by midnight after Saturday's gala, take this to the Federal Building." Sarah stared at the envelope. "No, it contains the records. No, Sarah, I am not accepting instructions for what to do if you disappear." Natalie reached across the table and covered her sister's hand. "I need you to." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "You love him." Natalie froze. Sarah gave a broken laugh. "You think I never noticed there is nothing between us. That was not what I said." Natalie withdrew her hand. "He does not know. Of course he does not know." "It is better that way." For whom Natalie looked toward the dark window. For Damian, she thought. For me. For every person whose weakness had ever been used against them. "He cannot afford it," she said. Sarah wiped her eyes. "Love anything he cannot control, and you can." Natalie looked at the envelope. "No." Sarah remained until morning. When she left, she took the envelope. On Saturday evening, snow began falling over Chicago again. Natalie stood before the mirror in her bedroom wearing a dark blue gown. The fabric followed the line of her body without glitter or decoration. Her hair fell in loose waves over one shoulder. On the dresser lay her museum badge, her phone, and a small silver pin containing an emergency alarm. She attached the pin to her dress. A black car waited outside. It did not belong to Damian. Natalie had hired it under Sarah's name. At the museum entrance, cameras flashed against the falling snow. Damian stood beneath the stone archway in a black tuxedo, speaking with a senator. Marcus remained at his shoulder. Damian looked toward the arriving car. Natalie stepped onto the pavement. His expression changed immediately. He excused himself and walked toward her. "I told you not to come." Natalie held out the corrected guest list. "And I told you the West Corridor was dangerous." His eyes moved over her dress, then returned to her face. "For once in your life, do what I ask." She stepped closer. "For once in yours, ask yourself why I never do." She placed the guest list in his hand and entered the museum. Damian remained beneath the falling snow. Through the glass doors, he watched Natalie move into the crowd. She did not take her usual place behind him. She walked ahead, scanning the chandelier's balconies, staff badges, and mirrored corridors, searching for the danger no one else believed was already inside. The night she stepped in front of him. Inside the museum, the air felt warmer than it should have. Crystal chandeliers cast gold across the marble floor. A string quartet played beneath the central staircase while waiters moved through the crowd with silver trays balanced on white-gloved hands. Politicians laughed beside judges. Business leaders raised glasses with men whose names never appeared on official guest lists. Every smile looked polished. Every shadow seemed to move. Natalie crossed the main gallery without slowing. Her eyes moved from face to face, then to hands, doors, cameras, and reflections. She counted the guards near the east staircase. 2. She checked the balcony above the ballroom. Marcus had placed another man there. The north exit remained clear. The south corridor was crowded. The small red light above the west corridor camera was dark. Natalie stopped. A museum employee nearly walked into her. "Excuse me, ma'am." She stepped aside without looking at him. The camera should have been active. She checked her phone and opened the security report Marcus had sent earlier that afternoon. The west corridor camera had passed inspection at 3:40. She looked toward the far end of the ballroom. Marcus stood beside Damian, listening to something through his earpiece. Damian was speaking with Senator Collins and 2 hospital board members. His posture was relaxed, but Natalie knew the difference between calm and performance. His shoulders were too still. One hand rested near the button of his tuxedo jacket. He had seen the disabled camera, too. Then, why was he still standing there? Natalie moved toward Marcus. A waiter crossed between them carrying champagne. She noticed his lapel. Every member of the museum catering staff wore a small silver pin shaped like a column. This man did not. He turned before she could see his face. Natalie changed direction and followed him. The waiter entered a service passage near the sculpture gallery. "Excuse me," he continued walking. Natalie quickened her pace. "Sir." The man pushed through a gray door marked "Staff Only." Natalie reached it seconds later. Locked. She pressed her ear against the metal. Nothing. She stepped back and looked for another entrance. A security guard approached. "Ms. Brooks." She recognized him from Marcus's team, the man who entered this door. "Find him." "What man?" Catering jacket, dark hair, approximately 6 feet, no staff pin. The guard tried the handle, door locks automatically. "Where does it lead?" "Kitchen access and the west service hall." Natalie looked toward the ballroom. "Call Marcus." The guard touched his earpiece. Natalie was already walking away. She found Marcus near the base of the staircase. He excused himself from Damian and met her beside a marble column. "The west camera is down," she said. "I know. A technician is checking it." A man without a staff pin entered the service hall, where, near the sculpture gallery. Marcus spoke into his microphone. "Seal the west service access. Check catering identification." He looked at Natalie. "Stay here. I need the updated staff list." "I said stay here. The list is in the administrative office. I will send someone. Someone who does not know what they are looking for." Marcus stepped closer. "You are not security." "No," Natalie said. "Security keeps reminding me." His expression tightened. Before he could answer, Damian approached. "What happened?" Marcus looked toward the crowd. "Possible identification issue. We are checking it." Damian looked at Natalie. "What did you see?" A waiter without a staff pin entered the west service corridor. "Face no, we cancel," she said. Damian glanced around the ballroom. More than 600 guests filled the museum. Television crews had already positioned themselves near the stage. The mayor was expected within 10 minutes. "No." Natalie stared at him. "The west camera is inactive. Marcus has men in the corridor. The man entered before they sealed it. Then they will find him. You do not know whether he is alone." Damian lowered his voice. "I'm not leaving because one employee forgot a pin. He did not forget it. You cannot know that." He turned when I followed him. He knew exactly where the service door was. He did not speak to anyone in the kitchen. He went directly into the corridor. Damian studied her face. "You are certain?" "Yes." Marcus pressed one finger against his earpiece. His expression changed. "What the service hall is empty." Natalie felt cold move through her. "What exits? Kitchen, loading dock, portrait gallery, mechanical room. Seal all of them. They are being sealed." Damian looked toward the west corridor. "Who has access to the portrait gallery?" Marcus answered. "Museum staff, catering supervisors, senior security, and anyone with an executive event badge." Natalie looked at Damian's badge, then at her own, then at Ethan Cole across the room. Ethan stood near the bar speaking with Alderman Voss. He was smiling, but his eyes were on Damian. His right hand held a champagne glass. His left hand remained in his pocket. Natalie watched him check his watch. Once. Then again. The senator beside Damian touched his arm. "Mr. Cross, the press is ready." Damian looked toward the stage. Natalie stepped in front of him. "Do not go." The senator looked between them. Damian's voice remained quiet. "Move." "No." Marcus glanced toward the cameras. Several had turned in their direction. Damian took Natalie by the elbow and guided her behind the column. His touch was controlled, but his fingers tightened. "You are creating a scene. I am trying to prevent one." "You have Marcus's attention. Let him do his job. I cannot protect you if you keep walking away from every warning." His eyes hardened. "I did not ask you to protect me." The word struck with more force than he intended. Natalie became very still. Damian saw it immediately. He loosened his grip. "That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. Natalie, go make your speech." She pulled her arm free. Damian watched her walk toward the administrative hallway. For a moment he almost followed. The mayor arrived to a wave of applause. Senator Collins touched Damian's shoulder again. The cameras waited. Damian turned toward the stage. Natalie reached the administrative office and unlocked the door with her badge. The room was empty. She turned on the desk lamp and opened the event management system. The temporary staff list appeared on the screen. She searched for catering employees assigned to the West section. 21 names. She opened the identification photographs. None matched the man she had followed. She checked recent changes. 2 records had been added less than an hour earlier. The first belonged to a bartender named Luis Carr. The second showed no photograph. Named Daniel Porter. Authorization approved by Ethan Cole's office. Natalie stared at the screen. A sound came from the hallway. Footsteps. Slow. Then silence. She reached for her phone. The door opened. Ethan stepped inside. His smile was easy. "There you are." Natalie moved one hand beneath the desk. "Why are you here? I saw you leave the ballroom. You should be listening to Damian's speech." "So should you." Ethan closed the door. Natalie pressed the emergency alarm on her silver pin. Nothing happened. No vibration. No signal. Ethan noticed the movement. "The museum has poor reception in this wing." His voice was still warm. That frightened her more than anger would have. Natalie stood. "You added Daniel Porter to the staff list." Ethan's smile faded slightly. "I approve hundreds of temporary requests. This one was approved from your office 53 minutes ago. Then my assistant handled it. Your assistant has been in the ballroom all evening." Ethan looked at the computer screen. "You always did notice too much." The words settled between them. Natalie's pulse became loud in her ears. "You changed the senator's meeting location." "I suggested a quieter room. The West Portrait Gallery. A beautiful space with an inactive camera." "That sounds like Marcus's failure." Natalie moved slowly toward the door. Ethan stepped into her path. "You should have stayed at your desk. You planted the warehouse device. I did not touch any device, but you approved the payment. I approve many things. You used Thomas Velez's authorization code." Ethan tilted his head. "Dead men are useful. They rarely object." Natalie's breath caught. He had admitted it because he no longer expected her to leave the room. Outside applause rose from the ballroom. Damian had reached the stage. Natalie glanced toward the door. Ethan followed her gaze. "You have spent 6 years protecting a man who barely sees you. He sees enough. Does he?" Ethan stepped closer. "You change his schedules. You remember his medications. You send flowers to his dead mother. You stand behind him at every event as though devotion will eventually make him human." Natalie's face remained still. Inside, something recoiled. "How do you know about the flowers? I know everything that moves through this building. You read my records. I read everyone's. You threatened me. I warned you. You marked my face to make you afraid. I was afraid." Ethan smiled faintly. "But you came anyway." Natalie looked at him. "Yes." The answer unsettled him. "You could have had a comfortable life," he said. "A salary, a title, a quiet apartment. All you had to do was remain a secretary. All you had to do was remain loyal." His expression changed. Loyalty is a word powerful men use when they expect other people to accept less. Damian trusted you. Damian uses people. He calls it trust when they survive long enough. You betrayed him for money, for a future, with the Belandis, with men who understand that empires require succession. You thought Damian would die and you would inherit what remained. Ethan's smile returned. "I thought Chicago deserved someone less sentimental." Natalie almost laughed. "You are trying to kill a man because he is sentimental. No, I am killing him because he is becoming careless." His eyes moved over her face. "You made him careless." Natalie felt the truth beneath the accusation. Damian had started watching her. He had canceled meetings for her. He had exposed fear in the elevator. Ethan had noticed before either of them understood it. "Where is the shooter?" Natalie asked. Ethan's gaze shifted toward the wall clock. "You are late." She reached for the door. He caught her wrist. Natalie twisted, but his grip tightened. "Let go. You should not have come." She drove the heel of her shoe into his foot. Ethan cursed and loosened his hand. Natalie pulled free. He reached inside his jacket. She grabbed the desk lamp and swung it. The metal base struck his shoulder. He stumbled against the filing cabinet. Natalie ran. She opened the door and sprinted into the hallway. Behind her, Ethan shouted, "Stop her!" The corridor lights went out. Darkness swallowed the walls. Natalie kept moving. She knew the layout. 20 steps to the corner. 10 more to the service staircase. She heard another door open behind her. Footsteps followed, faster than hers. Natalie reached the corner and turned. A hand caught the back of her dress. The fabric tightened across her throat. She threw her weight forward, heard the seam tear, and slipped free. A man cursed behind her. Not Ethan, the fake waiter. Natalie ran toward the ballroom entrance. The emergency door was locked. She pressed her badge against the reader. Red light. Access denied. She tried again. Red. The man's footsteps approached. Natalie looked around. A fire alarm box was mounted beside the door. She lifted the clear cover and pulled. Nothing happened. The system had been disabled. She backed away from the door. The fake waiter appeared at the end of the corridor. He no longer carried a tray. One hand was inside his jacket. Natalie turned and ran toward the West Service Hall. She pushed through a gray door. Noise rushed back around her. The quartet. Applause. The distant sound of Damian's voice through the ballroom speakers. The service hall was empty. Natalie searched for another route. A sign pointed toward the portrait gallery. Her blood went cold. The senator's private meeting. Ethan had moved it there. She pulled out her phone. No signal. She tried Damian anyway. The call failed. She tried Marcus. Failed. She ran. In the ballroom, Damian stood at the podium beneath the chandeliers. The speech lay open in front of him. He had read none of it. His eyes kept moving toward the administrative corridor. Natalie had not returned. Marcus stood near the stage, listening to reports from his team. No waiter had been found. No unauthorized employee had exited the building. Damian finished the final line of the speech. Applause filled the room. He stepped away from the podium. A museum aide approached. "Mr. Cross, Senator Collins is waiting in the portrait gallery." Damian looked toward the senator's empty chair. "I thought the meeting was scheduled upstairs. It was moved for privacy." "By whom?" The aide hesitated. "Mr. Cole's office." Damian turned toward Marcus. "Find Natalie." Marcus pressed his earpiece. No response from her phone. Damian looked across the crowd. Ethan was gone. Everything inside him became still. The museum aide opened the west corridor door. Sir Damian followed him. Marcus moved with them. A security guard stopped Marcus near the entrance. "We found a disabled alarm in the administrative wing." Marcus looked at Damian. "Do not enter that gallery." Damian had already crossed the threshold. The corridor beyond was lined with antique mirrors and portraits darkened by age. The ballroom music faded behind him. The aide walked several feet ahead. Damian watched his reflection move across the mirrors. Black tuxedo, empty hands, no Natalie behind him. He stopped. The aide continued. "Sir, where is the senator inside?" Damian looked at the dark camera above the corridor, then at the service door near the gallery. The small handle shifted. He turned toward the aide. The man reached inside his jacket. Damian moved first. He caught the man's wrist and slammed him against the wall. The gun fired into the ceiling. Plaster fell. The aide drove his elbow into Damian's ribs. Damian struck him across the face, twisted the weapon free, and pushed him to the floor. The service door opened behind him. A second man stepped into the corridor. Natalie reached the final corner. The gunshot echoed through the mirrors. She saw Damian fighting the first attacker. Then she saw the second man. He raised a pistol toward Damian's back. Marcus was running from the ballroom, but he was too far away. Natalie tried to shout, "Damian!" The word disappeared beneath the music and the guests screaming behind Marcus. The gunman aligned the sight. Damian did not turn. Natalie ran. Her shoes struck marble. Damian heard them. He looked toward the mirror. For one fractured second, he saw everything at once. The first attacker on the floor, the second gunman behind him, Natalie running toward him, her face filled with a fear he had never seen before. Natalie, no! She slammed both hands into his chest. The gun fired. The sound was small, almost ordinary. Natalie's body jerked. Damian stumbled backward. She remained standing for one impossible moment between him and the shooter. Her eyes widened. The leather portfolio slipped from her fingers. Papers scattered across the marble. A dark stain appeared beneath her left collarbone. Then her knees gave way. Damian caught her. Marcus fired twice. The second gunman collapsed against the service door, one hand gripping his thigh. The weapon skidded across the floor. Damian lowered Natalie carefully. Her blood covered his hands almost immediately. No, the word left him without force. He pressed his palm against the wound. Blood moved between his fingers. Natalie, look at me. Her eyes opened. She tried to breathe. The sound was wet and shallow. West exit, she whispered. Marcus ran toward their service door. Second man. We have him, Damian said. Natalie's fingers closed weakly around his sleeve. Ethan. Damian froze. What about Ethan? He knew. Her breath broke. Damian leaned closer. Natalie, stay with me. She looked at him as though the corridor contained only the two of them. You were supposed to stay behind me, he said. A faint smile touched her lips. That was the problem. What problem? Her eyes filled with something that looked almost like sorrow. You never looked back. Her hand slipped from his sleeve. Her eyes closed. Damian's face changed. Natalie. No response. He touched her cheek. Natalie. Marcus returned. Ambulance is coming. Tell them now. They are on the way. Tell them now. Marcus knelt beside him and checked Natalie's pulse. It is weak. Damian pulled off his jacket and pressed it against her wound. The first attacker groaned near the wall. Damian did not look at him. Guests gathered at the corridor entrance. Security pushed them back. Cameras flashed despite the shouting. Damian heard none of it clearly. The world had narrowed to Natalie's face and the terrible spaces between her breaths. Her skin had become pale. Her lips were losing color. He leaned close to her ear. You do not get to leave. His voice broke. You hear me. You do not make that decision. Marcus looked at him. Damian had given orders during shootings, raids, funerals, and betrayals. Marcus had never heard fear in his voice. Paramedics arrived with a stretcher. One of them pushed Damian's hands aside. We need room. I am holding pressure. We need to assess her. She has a wound below the left collarbone. The paramedic cut the fabric around the injury. Possible lung involvement. Natalie's chest rose unevenly. The paramedic placed an oxygen mask over her face. Blood pressure is dropping. Damian stood when they lifted her. He kept one hand beneath her head until the last possible second. The paramedics moved quickly toward the main entrance. Marcus caught Damian's arm. We have to secure you. Damian looked at him as though he had spoken another language. The shooter may not be alone. Damian pulled his arm free. She is not leaving without me. They moved through the ballroom. The crowd separated. The quartet had stopped playing. Champagne glasses sat abandoned on tables. A woman near the staircase covered her mouth. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Cross, were you the target? Who is the woman? Was this connected to organized crime? Damian followed the stretcher without looking at them. Snow fell heavily outside. The paramedics loaded Natalie into the ambulance. One turned toward Damian. Family only. I am going with her, sir. Damian stepped closer. The paramedic saw the blood covering his shirt and hands. Marcus spoke quietly. Let him in. The doors closed. Inside, the space was too bright. Machines surrounded Natalie. One paramedic inserted a needle into her arm. Another listened to her chest. Breath sounds absent on the left. Preparing decompression, Damian sat near her feet. He could not touch her without getting in their way. That helplessness felt unbearable. A paramedic pushed a needle into Natalie's chest. Air escaped with a sharp hiss. Her body moved. Damian gripped the edge of the bench. Is she awake? No. Will she survive? The paramedic did not answer. The ambulance turned sharply. Damian watched Natalie's face beneath the oxygen mask. He remembered every time she had stood at his desk waiting for him to notice something. Every cup of coffee, every changed reservation, Every flower without a card, every warning he had dismissed because it came from a woman holding a calendar instead of a gun. He had believed protection looked like armed men and armored cars. Natalie had made it look like canceled lunches, repaired cameras, marked pages, a woman standing 3 steps behind him while watching every direction he refused to see. The ambulance stopped at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The doors opened. Doctors and nurses surrounded the stretcher. Damian followed until a woman in blue scrubs blocked his path. "I am Dr. Sloan. You cannot enter. She was shot. I can see that. The bullet entered below the left shoulder. We have the information. She lost consciousness 3 minutes after impact. Mr. Cross stepped back. I am coming with her. No." The word stopped him. Few people spoke to Damian Cross that way. Dr. Sloan did not seem to know or care. "Her lung is collapsing. The bullet may have damaged a major artery. Every second you keep me here makes her chances worse." Damian stepped aside. The doors swung open. Natalie disappeared through them. He stood in the hallway with her blood drying across his hands. Marcus arrived several minutes later. His tuxedo jacket was gone. Snow covered his shoulders. "We have 1 attacker alive," he said. "The first man is dead." Damian stared at the operating room doors. Ethan escaped through the loading dock. No response. His car was found 2 blocks away. "We are closing the roads." Damian looked down at his hands. Marcus continued. "The wounded shooter is connected to a Belandi crew in Indiana. Find Ethan. We will." Alive. Marcus hesitated. Why Damian lifted his eyes? Before that night, the answer would have been simple. Alive so Damian could make him afraid. Alive so Damian could make the punishment last. Now he thought of Natalie's records, her warnings, and the years he had never bothered to understand. "Because he is going to tell me how long she knew." Marcus watched him carefully. Damian turned back toward the operating room. "And then you are going to bring me everything she ever found." The red light above the doors remained on. Damian sat in the nearest chair. He did not call the board. He did not contact the mayor. He did not ask who had seen the shooting or what the press was saying. He remained beneath the hospital lights with Natalie's blood on his clothes, waiting for a door he could not command to open. Everything he never saw. The red light above the operating room doors remained on. Damian sat beneath it without moving. Hospital staff passed through the corridor carrying charts, medication trays, and cups of coffee gone cold. Shoes squeaked against the polished floor. Phones rang behind the nurse's station. Somewhere nearby, a child cried for his mother. Life continued around him with an ordinary cruelty. Natalie was fighting for hers behind 2 locked doors, and the world refused to stop. Marcus stood near the window with a phone pressed to his ear. He had been speaking quietly for several minutes, giving orders Damian barely heard. "Close the airports, watch the train stations. Check every Cross property. Find Ethan Cole." Damian stared at the blood beneath his fingernails. It had dried into the lines of his skin. A nurse had offered him a towel. He had not taken it. He did not want her blood removed. Not yet. It was the only proof that she had been in his arms and not merely inside his head. Marcus ended the call. They found Ethan's driver. Damian did not look up. Alive. Yes. Where? In the parking garage beneath Ethan's building. He was unconscious inside the trunk of his own car. Did he see anything? He says Ethan asked him to bring the car around at 7. Someone struck him from behind. Someone. He did not see a face. Damian looked at the operating room doors. Ethan planned his exit before the gala. "It looks that way. Find the route. We are checking private airfields and properties connected to the Belandis." Damian's voice became quiet. "Do not let them kill him." Marcus watched him. "That may not be our decision. Make it yours." Before Marcus could respond, the operating room doors opened. Dr. Sloan stepped into the hallway. Her surgical cap covered most of her hair. A faint mark crossed the bridge of her nose where a mask had pressed against her skin. Damian stood so quickly the chair struck the wall. "Is she alive?" "Yes." The word left Dr. Sloan without comfort. Damian waited. The bullet entered beneath the left collarbone and passed through the upper portion of her lung. It damaged several blood vessels but missed the heart and the major artery. Then she is safe. No. Dr. Sloan removed her cap. She lost a significant amount of blood. We repaired the damage and placed a chest tube, but her condition is critical. The next 48 hours matter. Damian's jaw tightened. When will she wake up? I do not know. You performed the surgery. Yes. Then give me an answer. I gave you the only honest one. Marcus shifted near the window, but Damian did not notice. Dr. Sloan held his gaze. Her body has been through severe trauma. She may wake tonight. She may remain unconscious for days. She may develop complications. I will not lie to make you feel powerful. Damian's hands curled at his sides. Can I see her when she is moved to intensive care? How long soon? The doctor turned away. Dr. Sloan. She stopped. Damian's voice was lower. Did she feel it? Dr. Sloan looked back at him. The pain. He said nothing. She was unconscious when she arrived. That is not what I asked. The doctor studied his face. She would have felt the impact. After that, blood loss and the collapsed lung would have affected her awareness quickly. Damian looked down. Dr. Sloan softened slightly. She was not alone. No, he said. She was not. The doctor walked away. Damian sat again. The blood on his hands had begun to crack. 20 minutes later, a nurse led him through a set of glass doors. Natalie lay beneath white sheets in a room filled with machines. A tube ran into her mouth. Another disappeared beneath the bandages wrapped across her chest. Wires connected her body to monitors that measured each fragile rhythm. Her face looked smaller. Without her careful expression, without the calm gaze that usually held the world at a distance, she looked younger than 31. Damian stopped at the doorway. The nurse adjusted a line near Natalie's arm. You may sit beside her. Do not touch the equipment. Can she hear me? Some patients remember voices. Some do not. Damian entered. He took the chair beside the bed. For several seconds he could not make himself touch her. He had held weapons without hesitation. He had signed orders that changed the lives of thousands. He had placed his hand on the shoulders of grieving families and promised revenge. Natalie's fingers frightened him. They lay open against the sheet pale beneath the hospital lights. He reached for them carefully. Her skin was warm. The warmth nearly broke him. You are still here, he whispered. The monitor continued its steady sound. Damian leaned back. You always stay too late. Nothing moved in her face. He watched the machine breathe for her. I should have listened. The confession sounded useless in the room. He lowered his eyes. I should have listened years ago. The door opened behind him. A young woman stood in the entrance. She had Natalie's dark eyes and the same shape to her mouth, but fear had stripped all softness from her face. Sarah Brooks carried a red coat over one arm. Snow melted in her hair. She looked at Natalie. Then she looked at Damian. Recognition arrived slowly. You are him. Damian stood. Sarah. Her eyes sharpened. You know my name. Natalie spoke about you. No, she did not. Damian said nothing. Sarah entered the room. She moved toward the bed but stopped when she saw the bandages. Her breath caught. What happened? Damian looked at Natalie's hand inside his. She was shot. I know that. Sarah's voice shook. I heard it from a reporter. I saw her being carried out of the museum on television. I am asking what happened. The gunman was aiming at me. Sarah stared at him. Damian released Natalie's hand. She stepped between us. For 1 second, Sarah seemed unable to understand the words. Then she crossed the room and slapped him. The sound cracked through the silence. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Damian raised one hand without looking at him. Sarah's palm remained lifted between them. Tears filled her eyes. She told me you would get her killed. Damian touched the corner of his mouth. She was right. Sarah had expected resistance. The answer stopped her. She looked at Natalie again. My sister spent 6 years cleaning up after your life. I know. No, you do not. Her voice rose. You know her coffee order. Damian said nothing. You know which song she plays when she cannot sleep. You know she hates thunderstorms because our father drove off the road during one when we were children. You know she still checks the back seat before getting into a car because our mother taught us to. Damian remained still. Sarah stepped closer. You do not know her. No. The honesty made her anger falter. Damian looked at Natalie. But I want to. Sarah pressed her lips together. You had 6 years. I know. The monitor continued its quiet rhythm. Sarah moved to the other side of the bed and took Natalie's hand. Damian returned to his chair. Neither spoke for a long time. Near dawn, Sarah remembered the envelope. She reached into her bag and placed it on the table beside Damian. "She gave me this last night." He looked at it. "What is it?" She said to take it to federal authorities if she did not call me by midnight. Damian did not touch it. "Open it. It belongs to her. She was investigating your company. It belongs to whatever she was trying to stop." Damian lifted the envelope. Natalie's handwriting appeared across the front. "Sarah Brooks, emergency only." He opened it carefully. Inside were printed photographs, vendor records, account transfers, access logs, and copies of the threatening messages. Ethan's name appeared across several pages. At the bottom was a sealed letter addressed to Sarah. Damian held it out. Sarah stared at the handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it. She read silently. Halfway through, she covered her mouth. Damian looked away. He watched the monitors instead. Sarah lowered the letter. She knew. What she knew, she might not come home. Damian's chest tightened. Sarah wiped her face. She wrote that I should not blame myself. She looked toward him. "She wrote something about you." Damian did not ask. Sarah read the sentence aloud. I stayed because there was still something in him worth protecting, even when he could not see it. The words seemed to remain in the air after Sarah finished. Damian looked at Natalie. She lay motionless beneath the white sheets. He thought of every morning she had entered his office before sunrise. Every evening he had walked away while she remained at her desk. Every warning he had treated as an inconvenience. Something in him folded inward. Sarah placed the letter against her chest. "She loved you." Damian's voice was almost inaudible. "I know. No, you know now." He lowered his head. "Yes." At 8 that morning, Marcus returned with news. A private aircraft had filed a flight plan from Gary, Indiana to Montreal under the name of a shipping executive connected to Ethan. The plane had not departed. Road cameras showed a black sport utility vehicle heading toward the airfield. Damian stood. Sarah looked at him. "Where are you going to find the man who did this?" Her face hardened. "So you can kill him." Damian looked at Natalie. The answer he had carried for most of his life rose naturally. Yes, it would be simple, expected. It would calm the men waiting for his decision and remind every rival family that Damian Cross remained dangerous. He looked at Sarah. "So he can tell me the truth. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have right now." Damian turned to Marcus. "No one enters this room without Sarah's approval." Sarah stared at him. "You do not give me authority over my own sister." "No," he said. She did. He walked out. The city was waking beneath a hard gray sky. Cross Meridian Tower stood above the river, as though nothing had changed. Damian entered through the private garage and took the elevator to the executive floor. Natalie's desk was empty. Her coffee cup sat beside the keyboard. A page from the gala guest list remained beneath a paperweight. Damian stopped in front of that chair. He had passed it thousands of times. He had never sat there. He did now. From Natalie's desk, his office looked different. The glass walls revealed every movement inside. Anyone sitting there would see him walk to the windows when angry. They would see him rub his temple when tired. They would notice which visitors made him close the blinds and which phone calls left him staring at nothing. His office had never been private from Natalie. He had only believed it was because she never used what she saw against him. Marcus placed a small key on the desk. Sarah gave us permission to open the locked drawer. Damian looked at it. "Did you search it?" "No, why? It did not feel like mine to open." Damian inserted the key. The drawer slid out. Inside were 6 black notebooks. Each was labeled with a year. He opened the first. Dates filled every page. Vehicle numbers, restaurant names, descriptions of strangers, notes about canceled meetings and unexplained access requests. March 14th, driver reported brake vibration. Maintenance claim no issue. Requested second inspection. Brake line partially cut. April 22nd. Guest added to donor dinner without identification. Removed from list. Later connected to Belandi associate. June 9th. Damian reported migraine. Security meeting postponed. Unknown vehicle remained outside building for 30 minutes and left after schedule change. Damian turned page after page. 6 years. Natalie had recorded everything. He opened another notebook. A photograph fell onto the desk. It showed Damian leaving a courthouse. Natalie had circled a man standing near the entrance. Beneath it she had written, "Same man appeared at River South Opening and Monroe Hotel. Verify employment before future public event." Marcus leaned closer. "We questioned him last year. Who was he? Belandi surveillance." Damian looked at the date. Natalie had identified him 4 months before security did. He opened the private files on her computer. The password prompt appeared. Marcus handed him a folded note Sarah had found inside the envelope. Damian entered the first password. Lily's. The second password was a date. His mother's birthday. The screen opened. Folders filled the desktop. Threat assessments, vendor checks, employee reports, medical information. Damian clicked the folder marked DC. Inside was a list of every medication he had taken since Natalie began working for him. Another document listed foods he could tolerate during migraines. A note appeared beside a record of his mother's death. "Do not schedule him alone after 5. He pretends solitude is strength. It is not." Damian leaned back. Marcus looked away. On the desk sat an old phone. Damian recognized it. It had belonged to him years earlier. Natalie had replaced the battery after he complained that it no longer held a charge. He turned it on. One recording remained. His mother's last voicemail. Damian pressed play. Her voice filled the empty office. "Damian, call me when you get this, and eat something that did not come from a vending machine." The message ended. A second voice followed. Natalie's. She must have spoken while testing the recording. "You were loved before you became frightening. I wish you remembered that." Damian stopped the playback. For several seconds he did not breathe. Marcus stood near the glass wall. "Did she ever tell you no? That she loved you no?" Marcus looked at the notebooks. "She told you every day." Damian closed his eyes. His phone rang. One of Marcus's men had reached the airfield. Ethan was there. Damian stood. The private hangar outside Gary smelled of fuel and cold metal. Rain tapped against the roof. Ethan sat in a chair near the center of the empty space. His hands were bound behind him. Blood marked one side of his face where someone had struck him. 2 cross guards stood nearby. Marcus entered first. Damian followed. Ethan lifted his head. "There he is." Damian stopped several feet away. Ethan smiled through a split lip. "The grieving king. Where is the Belandi contact gone? Names. You already know the family. I want every name." Ethan leaned back. "I want protection." Damian looked at Marcus. Marcus remained silent. Ethan laughed. "From him. From you. From everyone. You arranged the warehouse attack. I approved a payment. You changed the gala meeting. I suggested a room. You hired the shooters." Ethan's smile faded. "I introduced people who shared an interest." Damian walked closer. "What interest, your removal?" Why, Ethan looked around the hangar. "You built an empire and left no space for anyone else to become more than useful. You wanted my chair. I wanted a future that did not depend on your mood. You had money, you had ownership, you had my trust." Ethan gave a bitter laugh. "That is the cheapest thing you ever offered." Damian stopped in front of him. "You threatened Natalie. She was interfering. You marked her face, to frighten her away. She came anyway." Ethan studied him. "Yes, the answer contained satisfaction. She came because she loved you. That made her predictable." Damian's hands curled. Ethan saw it. "You did not know." Damian said nothing. "That is the best part." Marcus shifted his weight. Ethan continued. "She watched you for 6 years. She memorized your routes, your medication, your mother's flowers. She stepped between you and every danger she could see." His smile became cruel. "And you called her a secretary." Damian struck him. The chair fell sideways. Ethan hit the concrete floor. One of the guards moved forward, but Marcus raised a hand. Damian lifted the chair upright. Blood ran from Ethan's nose. "You do not say her name." Ethan laughed softly. "Now you defend her." Damian gripped the front of his shirt. "Where are the records?" "What records?" "The Belandi payments. The names inside Cross Meridian." Ethan looked into his eyes. "How long do you think she will survive?" Damian hit him again. The sound echoed through the hangar. Marcus stepped closer. "Damian." Ethan coughed blood onto the floor. "You cannot kill me without losing what I know." Damian leaned near his face. "I have killed men for less." "I know." Ethan smiled faintly. "That is why she never told you what she found. She knew you would become this." Damian froze. The words entered deeper than the insult. He saw Natalie in his office. "I am refusing to name a traitor before I have proof. In Damian's world, anger does too." He released Ethan's shirt. Ethan watched him carefully. "What are you doing?" Damian stepped back. He looked at Marcus. "Call the federal agent handling the cross-meridian investigation." Marcus stared at him. Ethan's expression changed. "No." Damian adjusted his cuffs. "You wanted protection. You cannot turn me over. You have records they want. We can make a deal. You already did. With you. There is no deal." Ethan struggled against the restraints. "You think prison makes you merciful?" Damian looked at him. "No." His voice was calm. "I think killing you would be easy." Ethan's breathing became faster. Damian looked toward the rain beyond the open hangar door. "Natalie spent 6 years trying to stop me from choosing what was easy." He walked away. Ethan shouted behind him, "She will never forgive you." Damian stopped but did not turn. "She does not owe me forgiveness." He continued toward the car. By the time Damian returned to Chicago, Natalie had not awakened. He entered her room after sunset. Sarah was asleep in the chair near the window. Damian placed a cup of coffee on the table beside her and sat near Natalie. The machines continued their steady work. He opened one of the novels found in her apartment. A detective story. He began reading aloud. After 3 pages, he stopped. "This man is an idiot." Natalie did not move. He entered the house without checking the second floor. "You would have closed the book by now." Damian turned the page. He continued reading. Night after night he returned. He told her about the snow along the lake. He described Marcus threatening a reporter who tried to enter the intensive care unit. He told her Sarah had rearranged the flowers because his placement lacked balance. He brought white lilies and asked the nurse whether the scent would affect her breathing. For the first time in his life, he asked permission before filling a room. On the 4th night, Damian sat with Natalie's hand inside his. "I thought loyalty meant obedience." His thumb moved across her knuckles. "You disobeyed me every time I was wrong," the monitor answered. "I called you my secretary because it made you sound replaceable." His voice became rough. "You were the only person who never was." Natalie remained still. Damian lowered his forehead to her hand. "I do not know how to repair what I did not see." The hospital room held the confession without judgment. At Cross Meridian, the board gathered without Natalie for the first time in 6 years. Her empty chair remained near the wall. Damian stood at the head of the table. The directors expected a discussion about the failed acquisition, the gala shooting, and federal attention surrounding Ethan's arrest. Damian placed Natalie's notebooks on the table. "We are restructuring company security." One director adjusted his glasses. "Marcus already controls security. He controls physical protection." Natalie identified threats that never reached his department. Another director looked at the notebooks. "Ms. Brooks is an executive assistant. She is the reason several of you are alive." Silence followed. Damian continued. "Every temporary worker will receive an independent background check. Employees may report safety concerns outside the normal chain of command. Contract workers injured on company property will receive medical coverage and paid leave." The chief legal officer leaned forward. "The cost would be significant. Yes, we are already facing delays after the warehouse closure. Yes, the Indiana acquisition may collapse, then it collapses." Several directors exchanged looks. One cleared his throat. "We cannot rebuild the company because your secretary was injured." Damian looked at him. "We are rebuilding it because she was right." No one spoke again. The reforms moved forward. Damian approved a risk analysis department based on Natalie's methods. He ordered new camera systems for every property. He reviewed old employee injury claims and authorized payments the company had denied. The decisions cost millions. He signed every one. 2 weeks after the shooting, Natalie developed a fever. Damian arrived at the hospital and found 3 doctors inside her room. Sarah stood in the hallway with both hands over her mouth. "What happened, infection?" she whispered. "They said her blood pressure is falling." Damian moved toward the door. A nurse stopped him. "You cannot enter." He looked through the glass. Doctors surrounded Natalie. One adjusted medication. Another watched the monitor. The rhythm became faster, then irregular. Sarah began to cry. Damian placed one hand against the window. He had stood outside rooms while enemies begged for their lives. He had watched men lose everything because he decided they should. Now a sheet of glass separated him from the only life he wanted to protect. He could not break it. He could not threaten the infection. He could not buy another breath. Natalie's face appeared pale beneath the lights. Damian remembered the museum corridor. You never looked back. He pressed his forehead against the glass. I am looking now. His voice shook. Please be there. The doctors worked for nearly an hour. The fever began to fall before dawn. Natalie's blood pressure stabilized. Dr. Sloan stepped into the hallway. She responded to the medication. Sarah covered her face and cried. Damian remained against the glass. Is she safe? Dr. Sloan looked tired. She is stronger than the infection. That is not what I asked. It is the answer I have. Damian nodded. For once he accepted it. He stayed beside Natalie through the rest of the night. Sarah went home to shower. Marcus left to handle another round of interviews. The room became quiet. Damian sat with Natalie's hand inside his and eventually closed his eyes. Morning light spread across the floor. A faint movement touched his fingers. At first he believed he had imagined it. Then Natalie's hand moved again. Damian lifted his head. Her eyelids fluttered. He stood so quickly the chair shifted backward. Natalie. Her eyes opened slowly. Confusion moved through them. She looked at the ceiling, the machines, then at him. Damian could not speak. Natalie's lips parted. Her voice was rough and barely audible. You missed your 9 o'clock? For several seconds he only stared at her. Then a sound escaped him. Not a sob, not quite laughter. Something torn between both. He lowered his head against her hand. Natalie watched him with exhausted eyes. Damian. He looked up. She had never seen him cry. He did not hide it. You came back. Natalie tried to breathe more deeply and winced. I was not aware I had left. He laughed again, softer this time. Dr. Sloan entered with 2 nurses and began checking the monitors. Damian stepped aside only when Natalie looked at him. Stay, she whispered. He stopped. The doctor examined her pupils and asked several questions. Natalie answered slowly. Name, date, location. When Dr. Sloan asked if she remembered what happened, Natalie looked toward Damian. Yes. His face tightened. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them again. Ethan alive. We're in federal custody. Surprise crossed her face. You did not kill him, no. Natalie studied him. Damian felt more exposed beneath that weak gaze than he had beneath any weapon. Why, she asked. He pulled the chair closer and sat beside her. Because you were right. Her fingers moved beneath his. That must have hurt. It did. A faint smile touched her lips. Damian held her hand carefully. Outside the window, Chicago brightened beneath the morning sun. For the first time since the museum, Natalie looked directly at him without pain, closing her eyes. Damian did not look away. No more 3 steps behind Natalie remained in the hospital for another 3 weeks. Recovery did not arrive like a miracle. It came in measured breaths. 10 steps down a hallway, a spoon held without trembling. A night without waking to the sound of gunfire that existed only inside her memory. The first time she tried to stand, her knees gave way. Damian caught her before the nurse could reach them. Natalie gripped his arm until the room stopped moving. You can let go, she whispered. Damian did not. You are not steady. I will not become steady if no one lets me fall. His jaw tightened, but he loosened his hold. The nurse guided Natalie back into the chair. Damian stepped away. It was a small act. For him, it felt like surrender. 2 days later, he arrived with a folder containing plans for a private rehabilitation wing at his Lake Forest estate. Natalie read the first page. Then she closed it. No. Damian sat across from her. There would be medical staff at all hours. I am going home. Your apartment has stairs. I know. It has no secure entrance. I know that too. I can move you somewhere safer. You can stop deciding where I live. His face became still. I am trying to help. I know. Then why are you fighting me? Natalie rested one hand against the scar beneath her collarbone. Because you are still turning fear into control. The words struck him harder than anger would have. He looked toward the window. What should I do? The question surprised both of them. Natalie studied him. Ask me what I want. Damian looked back at her. What do you want? I want to recover in my own home. I want Sarah with me for the first week. I want security only after I approve the people involved. He nodded. Done. And I do not want gifts. I did not mention gifts. You were going to. I had considered flowers, not lilies. A faint smile touched his mouth. Noted. When Natalie returned to her apartment, Damian walked beside her from the car, not ahead, not behind, beside. At the entrance, he stopped. May I come inside? She looked at him. He had entered government offices without appointments. He had walked into private clubs where men feared refusing him. Yet he stood beneath the old apartment light waiting for permission. 10 minutes, she said. Inside, Damian noticed the photographs on her walls. Natalie and Sarah beside Lake Michigan. Their parents in front of a small house. Natalie laughing in a graduation gown. There were no photographs from Cross Meridian, no evidence that 6 years of her life had belonged to him. He looked at her. Why did you stay? Natalie lowered herself carefully onto the sofa. At first, I needed the salary. Sarah was finishing college. My parents had medical debt. And later, she looked toward the dark window. Later, I saw what betrayal had done to you. You felt sorry for me. No. Her answer was immediate. I saw a man who believed being feared was safer than being known. Damian stood very still. You thought you could change me. I thought you could change yourself. He looked down at his hands. Why did you care? Natalie breathed slowly before answering. Because I loved the man you kept hiding. The truth settled quietly between them. Damian took one step closer. Natalie raised her eyes. But love does not erase what happened. He stopped. You ignored me. You treated my work as something that appeared without effort. You listened only after my blood was on your hands. I know. And being shot for you does not mean I belong to you. His voice lowered. I know that too. She watched him carefully. Do you? I am learning. Natalie nodded. For now, that has to be enough. Damian left when the 10 minutes ended. He did not argue. During the following months, he visited only when invited. He sent messages instead of guards. He asked before making decisions that involved her. When fear made him impatient, he learned to remain silent long enough to hear what she was actually saying. Natalie returned to Cross Meridian 4 months after the shooting. She entered the lobby with a cane. Employees stood as she passed. Some applauded. She disliked the attention, but she kept walking. Damian waited beside the elevator. His hand moved toward her arm, then stopped. May I? Natalie placed her hand against his sleeve. Yes. They rode to the executive floor together. Damian led her past her old desk. It was empty. For one moment she thought he had replaced her. Then he opened the door across from his office. Gold letters marked the glass. Natalie Brooks, Director of Strategic Risk and Employee Protection. She turned toward him. You created a department. You created it 6 years ago. I only gave it a name. I am not returning as your secretary. I know. I report to the board. Yes. I have authority to cancel any event that fails security review. Damian looked at her. Even mine, especially yours. He smiled, accepted. Natalie entered the office. For the first time she had a door of her own. Weeks later she discovered that Damian had named the new employee's scholarship after her. She walked into his office without knocking. Change it. Damian looked up from his desk. The scholarship I do not want women in this company believing they must sacrifice themselves before anyone values them. He considered her words. What should it be called? The Cross Employee Family Fund. He nodded. It will be changed today. Natalie remained near the desk. You are getting better at this. At being corrected. At listening. I had an aggressive teacher. She laughed. The sound stopped him. He had heard her laugh before, but never without exhaustion behind it. He looked at her as though the room had become brighter. 1 year after the shooting, Damian returned to the museum gala. Snow fell over Chicago just as it had that night. Natalie stepped from the car wearing dark blue. The scar beneath her collarbone remained visible above the fabric. She no longer covered it. Damian walked toward the entrance. After 3 steps he stopped. Old habit. Old distance. He turned. Natalie stood near the car watching him. Cameras flashed. Damian held out his hand. You are blocking the entrance, Mr. Cross, she said. I have been accused of worse. She walked toward him and placed her hand in his. He waited until she reached his side. Inside the west corridor, cameras glowed red. Every exit had been inspected. Every employee had been verified. Natalie had built a system no one could dismiss as caution. Later that evening, they left the crowd and stood near the museum windows. Chicago shone beyond the glass. Damian looked at her. "I love you." He said it without demand, without strategy, without expecting the words returned. Natalie studied his face. "I know. That is not the answer I imagined. You are still imagining answers for other people." He exhaled. Old habit. She stepped closer. "I love you too." Relief moved across his face, but Natalie placed one hand against his chest. "I will never walk behind you again." Damian covered her hand with his. "I would not ask you to." She kissed him beneath the museum lights. It was not the kiss of a woman rewarding a man for changing. It was the choice of two people finally standing on equal ground. For 6 years, Natalie Brooks had walked 3 steps behind Damian Cross. It took one bullet for him to look back. It took much longer for him to understand what he saw. When they crossed the museum floor together that night, Damian did not lead. Natalie did not follow. They walked beside each other, and this time neither of them looked away.